What's up everybody, man, back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today I'm going to be answering one of the big questions in the MonsterVerse, that being, why was Godzilla 2014 so underpowered, especially when you compare him to how Godzilla is portrayed following 2014, and who is the most well-balanced version of Godzilla in the MonsterVerse? Before we get into it, what are you doing? Hype the video up, hype it! Hyping the video does a ton to help. It really does a lot. I really appreciate it. Everybody who likes and hypes the videos. Also, thank you guys all so much for your support on my recent lore videos. I've really appreciated that, and I'm having a lot of fun doing them, so let's keep it rolling. I would like to say, this video was done at the same time as the last Godzilla Q&A, so I would really highly recommend going and watching that one first, because we go into a lot of detail about Godzilla's history in the MonsterVerse, what he has been up to before the 2014 film. In order to get into why Godzilla was so underpowered in Godzilla 2014 and why he's so much stronger in King of the Monsters than he was in 2014, we have to first understand what Godzilla was up to before 2014. We're talking Godzilla's history with Ghidorah, Godzilla's history with the military, and so on, and I get more in depth with that in the last video. For now, just as a prerequisite before we get into the full discussion here, let me very quickly run you through some of that history. Generally speaking, we know Godzilla's been around for a long time. He's a very powerful species. We know that he has had a rivalry with Ghidorah that has lasted for a very long time. We know of at least 3 separate occasions on which Godzilla fought Ghidorah in the past, and we don't know what order these came in, but the first one was recorded in the cave paintings in Kong Skull Island showing Godzilla and Ghidorah fighting each other. Nope, that's not a prophecy, that is history. The second one is the cave art of the ancient Hollow Earth Temple Kingdom, way down there in the Hollow Earth that Godzilla sleeps in. There's cave art depicting Godzilla going to war alongside Mothra. It looks like Rodan's on his side, and a MUTO is at least present for this fight against King Ghidorah. So it seems like Godzilla was able to at one point rally some of the surface titans in a battle against Ghidorah. Maybe other Godzillas have helped out here and there throughout time when Ghidorah was on Earth. And then finally we know Godzilla was eventually able to trap King Ghidorah in the ice in Antarctica, you know, way before, but setting up the events of Godzilla King of the Monsters. That's all important history to get out of the way before we get into this discussion, so I just wanted to say that there. If you want really a lot more elaboration and depth on that topic, you have to go watch the last Q&A because I go more in depth with it there. Let's get to the question though. Ned0619 asks, can you explain why, in the lore, Godzilla is stronger in King of the Monsters than in 2014? Now, this is something that I'll definitely dive more into when I get to my King of the Monsters lore breakdowns, but he isn't. Very simply put, Godzilla isn't. Remember what we have seen Godzilla pull off before he's supercharged by Dr. Serizawa, and then remember what we see in Godzilla 2014. In Godzilla 2014, we see Godzilla moves incredibly rapidly in the water. In fact, he moves so fast he causes a freaking tsunami to wash away so much of Honolulu. Godzilla is a powerhouse in the ocean. Then we see Godzilla in San Francisco, and he's a little off balance. You know, Godzilla's not going out of his way to cause devastation. In fact, we can see Godzilla kind of does the opposite. Many times in Godzilla 2014, he goes out of his way to avoid causing damage to people. He dives under the ships at sea. He tries to avoid the blockade at the Golden Gate Bridge. Doesn't work great. He also doesn't linger on the destruction there. Like in earlier versions of the script, Godzilla's a lot more of a destroyer. He kind of causes a lot more destruction. That's not in the final movie. Godzilla's a lot more cautious in the film. He's not going out of his way to destroy buildings, and in fact, we see Godzilla sticks to in between buildings. Godzilla's not really causing tons of devastation. He maybe will push a MUTO through a building, but Godzilla himself is not plowing through buildings in the city. He's being very kind of cautious to avoid the buildings while fighting the MUTO, which is important. There's that very, very infamous scene now where Godzilla and the MUTO sprint at each other, and they're very slow. I don't think Godzilla's sprinting there. Godzilla is kind of lurking forward, already ready to fight. He's not sprinting into action. The MUTO's close enough to him to where he's more cautiously approaching, ready to throw the first fist. Godzilla's entering that, ready to fight. He's not running into the battle. He doesn't need to. The battle's coming to him fast enough. They're in close enough quarters. There's a big distinction between that and then Godzilla King of the Monsters. before Godzilla's supercharged. He shows up at Outpost 54 and does his intimidation display. No power needed there. He then appears in Antarctica. He seems incredibly ready to go, but he's not doing anything that Godzilla 2014 couldn't have done. Godzilla's charge up is much slower in Antarctica than it is for the entire rest of the film. It takes him longer to charge up. In fact, it takes him so long to charge up, Ghidorah is able to dodge his atomic breath. Godzilla's atomic breath is way wispier in Antarctica than it is for the rest of the film. Godzilla knows Ghidorah. He has fought this guy multiple times. Remember, there's at least 3 recorded instances. One where Godzilla fought Ghidorah by himself, one where Godzilla fought Ghidorah with other monsters at his side, and one where Godzilla was able to officially trap Ghidorah in the ice. So Godzilla fights Ghidorah and he knows what to do. He goes straight for the head. He's trying to slam Ghidorah into the ground, but he's still not got it. Godzilla gets thrown down the chasm. The gravity beams do major damage to him. He gets up. He's ready to fight. He's able to go after that, but Godzilla doesn't easily win that fight. Ghidorah still technically has the upper hand on him, even in Antarctica. Ghidorah is eventually chased off by the Argo and a swarm of other fighter jets, and it's been confirmed by Michael Dougherty. The reason is because Ghidorah has never seen anything like that before. He's never seen a ton of flying metal creatures that can shoot fireballs at him. He's never seen that. So he takes a second to get his bearings. This is Ghidorah waking up for the first time after thousands of years after all. It's not like where Godzilla in the 2014 film has a little bit of buffer before he goes to battle with the MUTOs, like he's been swimming around chasing them for a little while. We find out Godzilla was actually awakened before the male MUTO even hatched in 2014. Ghidorah just woke up literally minutes ago. He has no idea what's going on. And then after that, we see Godzilla catch Ghidorah in the ocean. And like I said, Godzilla's a powerhouse in the ocean. He's fast, he's nimble, he's got a lot of mobility down there that he doesn't have on land. And that's why he's able to manhandle Ghidorah underwater so well. From that point on, Godzilla's supercharged by Serizawa's nuke. So everything he does, from the atomic breath to the super fast sprint in Boston, all of that is supercharged Godzilla. Another distinction. We've never seen Godzilla run before. Like I said, in 2014, Godzilla is lurking towards the MUTO in that battle. I don't get the impression he's at top speed there. In Boston, that's the first time we've seen Godzilla achieve top speed, and he's supercharged. That's the reason that Godzilla is so much more powerful in King of the Monsters, because pretty much all the times people talk about Godzilla being powerful in King of the Monsters, they're talking about the second half of the film. His atomic breath is way bigger. Like, there's a noticeable difference between the wispy atomic breath that's in Antarctica and the very bulky, powerful atomic breath that we see in Boston. Godzilla's way faster in Boston than he was in Antarctica as well. Godzilla's moving pretty fast in Antarctica, but it's because he's not impeded by anything. There's no buildings around him. He's not being cautious. He's only got one target, whereas the MUTOs were 2 targets, smaller than him and faster than him. Ghidorah is much bigger than him and slower than him. Ghidorah's heads are faster than Godzilla, but Ghidorah's overall presence is a bigger, slower target than the MUTOs were. So there's a lot of reasons why Godzilla was a little more well prepared for that fight than he was for the MUTO. There's nothing to suggest the theory that Godzilla was rusty coming out of hibernation in Godzilla 2014. In fact, go watch my Godzilla 2014 lore videos. Godzilla hasn't been asleep that long. In 1954, Godzilla's awakened for the first time in an undisclosed amount of time, and Godzilla immediately goes on the warpath. Godzilla starts taking on military ships like -1. It's an actual part of the lore of that movie. Godzilla immediately goes to war. Now, he's not fighting other monsters, he's not fighting MUTOs, he's not fighting Titans, but he is in combat. He's then hit with a nuke, which theoretically should give him a pretty big power boost, and then he goes and takes a nap for a little while. We find out in King of the Monsters he takes a nap in his rejuvenating chamber. He then comes out a little while before the MUTOs actually start doing their thing. Like, Godzilla's actually been awake for days before he takes on the male MUTO. Godzilla woke up around the same time Joe Brody picked up the signals, which was like a little bit before the events of Godzilla 2014. So Godzilla's been awake for a little while. He's just been waiting to track the MUTOs down and to attack them. I'll also note that MUTOs are creatures specifically designed to prey upon Godzilla's species. They are a parasite. They're smaller than him. They're faster than him. They have techniques to injure him specifically and to work around him. Otherwise, that species would never be able to survive. In particular, they use their teamwork against him. They have those claws that can pinch holes in him. So they have advantages on Godzilla. That's another reason he has the perception of being a little weaker in 2014. He's also, like I said, got 2 opponents in 2014, whereas in King of the Monsters, he's only got the 1. And there's nothing to say that Godzilla, our Godzilla, has fought MUTO before. Now, we know other Godzillas have fought MUTOs. In fact, we know other Godzillas have been killed by them. The MUTOs themselves were birthed out of the corpse of Adam or Dagon. Doesn't matter. Literally all the same creature, just different names. But we don't know our Godzilla has ever fought one. He's definitely seen them before, but we don't know he's ever fought one. So for all we know, could be the first time he's ever fought those things. Unlike with Ghidorah, where we do know he's fought that guy before. From a filmmaker's perspective, it's because Gareth Edwards was trying to go for realism. Gareth Edwards was going for Godzilla being an animal. Godzilla needs to take a minute to catch his breath. Godzilla's not the fastest creature. He's not like the most invincible creature that's ever existed. He bleeds a lot. He has weaknesses. There are well-defined strengths and weaknesses to Godzilla in the 2014 film that nobody else follows up on. And the reason was because Gareth Edwards was going for realism and tension, and Michael Dougherty was going for action spectacle. He put a lot less emphasis on the limitations of Godzilla and a lot more emphasis on the feats of Godzilla to make him seem even cooler. They're very different approaches to the same character, and they completely alter our perception of him. Godzilla in 2014 is at his peak base strength. He has had nothing but time to soak up nuclear radiation. He's had at least since 1954, where he was hit with a nuclear bomb and very well fed. Godzilla should be stronger in 2014 than he is at the start of King of the Monsters, because he's had less time to recuperate himself after the events of 2014. It's because Edwards was going for realism. Godzilla literally gets tired. He gets worn out from using his atomic breath. He has to take a minute after beating the male MUTO. That building falling on him does some major damage to him. He has to like catch himself back up after that. Like, there are things that Godzilla has happened to him where he's physically exhausted in 2014. That goes away for the most part in King of the Monsters, although Ghidorah does still wear Godzilla down quite a bit visibly, especially towards the end of that fight. But it's really because Gareth Edwards balanced Godzilla and none of the other filmmakers have. Gareth Edwards put limitations on Godzilla that nobody else gave him, which I really appreciate. It's why Godzilla in the 2014 film, in retrospect, is, in my opinion, the most interesting version, and in some regards, my favorite version of the character. Now, I like the characterization of Godzilla in King of the Monsters more than in 2014, but the Godzilla in 2014 is the one that I think is the most well-balanced and the most compelling. Gareth Edwards has a very strict set of strengths and weaknesses for Godzilla that you can see on screen as the film plays out. As far as strengths go, he's physically a powerhouse. He's incredibly strong. He's got enormous weight to him. He uses that weight to his advantage multiple times. Godzilla's got his tail, which is incredibly powerful and has that whip-like feature. He's got really sharp claws, really sharp teeth. He's able to manhandle monsters in very direct ways. Godzilla in the 2014 film is really a close combat fighter, and above all else, when everything else fails, he's got the atomic breath to push enemies back and to knock him out so he can regain the upper hand. Godzilla has a set of strengths, but he also has a set of weaknesses. Godzilla's slow on land. Not in terms of like his top speed, like sprinting wise, but in terms of like literally he's getting outmaneuvered. The male MUTO outmaneuvers the heck out of him in Hawaii, and it's because Godzilla's very large and very slow. He's bulky. He's a major target. The MUTOs are also able to knock him off balance. Like Godzilla, he's pretty well balanced, especially with that tail, but the MUTOs, the male MUTO can spin him around, the female MUTO can knock him over, and it takes him a bit to get back up. He doesn't have infinite stamina. He doesn't have an infinite ability to use his atomic breath. His atomic charge up is very slow. Godzilla's gills are seen to be a weak point. When he's shot with missiles on the Golden Gate Bridge, he reacts in pain and bursts through the bridge to get away from those. The MUTOs are able to puncture holes in Godzilla with their claws, making him bleed. There are a lot of weaknesses to Godzilla, and that's all kind of done away with. Michael Dougherty really presents Godzilla against King Ghidorah, an enemy who has a very different advantage over Godzilla. And then you'd think we'd kind of work our way back towards like finding those strengths and weaknesses to play upon them in Godzilla vs. Kong, and we don't at all. In Godzilla vs. Kong, we don't do that. We don't go back to the fact that Godzilla's slow. He can be outmaneuvered. He can be thrown off balance. His atomic breath takes a long time to charge up. It wears him out to use it. He literally can't use it infinitely. It's also not Earth's most powerful atomic breath. It's not the most powerful atomic breath we had seen up to that point. We never address the gills being a weak point on Godzilla. We never really get into the fact that he can be punctured and bleed. Kong does slice into his leg with the axe, but we never emphasize the strengths and weaknesses of Godzilla. We really only emphasize the strengths and then add more strengths upon the strengths that were already there. That's why, in my opinion, the Godzilla in Godzilla vs. Kong is the one that breaks lore. He's no longer supercharged, or at least he shouldn't be theoretically. He kind of has to be given how he behaves. He's able to all of a sudden do things he wasn't able to do before. Godzilla vs. Kong is really the one that breaks canon. And like I said, a lot of the limitations placed on Godzilla in 2014, they're just gone. They're not addressed. In King of the Monsters, at least you can say it's because he's supercharged actively. In Godzilla vs. Kong, there is no explanation. It's just Godzilla's stronger than he used to be because it's what Adam Wingard wanted for the movie. And so that is why Godzilla 2014 was so underpowered. He wasn't. He wasn't. He was incredibly well balanced. He was a Godzilla with strengths and weaknesses that were presented in a way for all of us to get behind. It made the fights really compelling because we knew both at the same time Godzilla, he does have the strength to pull this off, but he also needs an amount of skill to pull it off because he's also got a lot of weaknesses that weigh him down. It made him incredibly interesting, incredibly compelling. It was a lot of fun. I really liked that. I like that a lot more. I think it's a lot more interesting when a character has a potential to lose a fight. And it isn't that Godzilla 2014 is underpowered. It's that Godzilla vs. Kong made Godzilla overpowered. Godzilla King of the Monsters, like I said, pretty much sticks to Godzilla's strengths and weaknesses as we saw in Godzilla 2014 until he's supercharged. And then Godzilla vs. Kong just said, he's always super, from this point on, he's always going to be supercharged, and he'll actually be doing things that he wasn't even doing when he was supercharged, like beam spamming. Like, it totally changed the way Godzilla operated, and that's why there's like a big disconnect between the MonsterVerse fans, where there's like a big community who's pretty loyal to the early MonsterVerse Godzilla, the King of the Monsters in 2014 style, and a big community who's very loyal to the GVK GXK style, where it's like two different Godzillas. People like the differences in them. I very much am on the earlier side. I think he's a lot more compelling. I also like the characterization there. I do not like what they do with the characterization of Godzilla in the later two films, but I understand what people find appealing about that Godzilla. He's a lot more powerful. He's a lot more, like, in some ways cooler because he can do more things. He can take more for sure, take more abuse, and he can deliver more abuse. So I get it, but it's not that Godzilla 2014 is underpowered. It's that the later Godzillas were overpowered to a point where it does kind of break the lore of the universe a little bit. That's why I also think Godzilla 2014 was the most well-balanced Godzilla in the MonsterVerse. He was the only one with enough clearly defined strengths and weaknesses to where it became more engaging and easier to root for and easier to relate yourself into the battle. Where at any time, you know, if Godzilla's winning or losing or how he's feeling, like, it's very clear when Godzilla's getting worn out. It's very clear when Godzilla's getting really abused. Like, when he's really losing that fight, it's pretty obvious. And then we jump to GVK and it's like, there's no visual demonstration that Godzilla's worn out when he fights Mechagodzilla. We know what a tired Godzilla looks like. It's what he looks like in 2014. It's when he's catching his breath. It's when he can't beam spam and he has to take a minute afterward again to kind of regain himself, regain his composure. He has to recharge up. In Godzilla vs. Kong, he's able to beam spam. That Mechagodzilla fight, he never has to take a minute to catch his breath. There's that moment where he kind of huffs and puffs before Mechagodzilla shows up, but it doesn't come across as Godzilla being out of breath or tired from the Kong fight at all. There's nothing from that Kong fight where it seems like Godzilla's worn out. It's because Godzilla wasn't, until enough fans got so angry about Godzilla getting so manhandled by Mechagodzilla that the creators behind the movie basically had to walk their intentions back, giving out-of-film statements that convolute the actual movie itself, basically as a way to kind of get themselves out of hot water with the fan base, because the fan base was being so aggressive about it. But what do you think? I'd love to hear what you guys think. What do you guys think about Godzilla in the 2014 film? And who was your favorite Godzilla in terms of their overall balance, their strengths and weaknesses? Not necessarily characterization. For me, again, it's King of the Monsters being a little more heroic. I like that in the MonsterVerse. But in terms of their overall balance, who is your favorite Godzilla? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment below and let me know. As always, leave your questions down below for future episodes. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was a lot longer than I intended for it to be, but there's a lot to talk about here, so that would be why. I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. It is through the support of the patrons on Patreon that I'm able to continue to make videos like this for you. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. If that's not your thing, please consider joining as a channel member. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man out.